Thank you for joining the Federal Program Compliance Division's statewide virtual training. This is the training for the Every Student Succeeds Act, Title IV Part A, Subpart 1, Student Support and Academic Enrichment. The title of this session is Program Objectives and Measurable Outcomes Data Collection, Phase 1 Reporting Cycle, January 17th through March 17th, 2023. This is Lenitra Guess. I am the Program Director for the Title IV Part A program. This presentation is intended solely to provide general information and guidance to Texas ESCs, LEAs, and participating private schools, and reflects the Texas Education Agency's current understanding of statute and applicable federal guidance. The content of this presentation is subject to change as a result of further potential information and guidance provided by federal agencies with regulatory oversight of these programs. This presentation does not constitute legal advice, and entities are therefore advised to seek legal counsel regarding the information and guidance provided in this presentation before acting on such information and guidance. This training session will cover the following: Title IV Part A, State and LEA Public Reporting Requirements, LEA Special Data Collection for Public Reporting Handbook, Smartsheet WorkApp Instructions, LEA Reporting Worksheet, that's an optional planning tool available for LEAs to use, future data submissions for the 22 through 23 school year, frequently asked questions, support for assistance and resources. Public reporting requirements. TEA is required to publicly report on how LEA Title IV Part A funds are being expended per content areas by the federal fiscal year. Also, the degree to which LEAs have made progress toward meeting the Title IV Part A objectives and outcomes. You may find more details regarding these items in the ESA Federal Statute, Section 4104. The LEA is required to annually provide a description of Title IV Part A activities, programs, objectives, and intended outcomes. A description of how the LEA will periodically evaluate the effectiveness of the Title IV Part A activities and programs. And an LEA assurance. The LEA must annually report how funds are being used to meet the Title IV Part A content areas. Today's session will focus on the description of Title IV Part A activity programs, objectives, and intended outcomes data. USDE, Department of Education, requirements are that TEA publicly report the degree to which LEAs have made progress toward meeting the program objectives and measurable outcomes. The Title IV Part A Special Data Collection for the program objectives and measurable outcomes. This data will be collected through the TEA Federal Program Compliance WorkApp. The submission requirements are for the federal fiscal year, which is a 27-month performance period, starting July 1, 2022 through September 30th, 2024. The LEA will submit 2 Title IV Part A program objectives and measurable outcomes for the current year, and these objectives and measurable outcomes should be discussed and established through stakeholder meaningful consultations. The LEA must also indicate the content areas per objective and measurable outcome. The LEA WorkApp report opens on January 17th, 2023, and the data is due March 17th, 2023. The Title IV Part A special data collection regarding the progress. It will be collected in the TEA Federal Program Compliance WorkApp again with the same submission requirements, July 2022 through September 2023. The LEA will report the initial progress toward the two Title IV Part A objectives and measurable outcomes that were reported earlier in the school year. The LEA WorkApp opens for the initial progress made, October 1st, 2023, and it is planned to be due December 1st, 2023. These are tentative dates for the WorkApp to open and LEAs to submit initial progress towards those two Title IV Part A objectives and measurable outcomes. The LEA special data collection for expenditures will occur in 2022 through 2023. The current year expenditures by service and/or content areas. TEA will discontinue only the expenditures data collection in the Title IV Part A compliance report, which is the PR 3107, and those expenditures will begin to be collected through the special collection, the WorkApp. However, districts will not include the 2021-2022 Title IV carryover in the expenditure section. This portion of the WorkApp will open October 1st through December 1st, 2023. These are the tentative dates in which the WorkApp will be open for expenditure reporting for the current year. LEA Special Data Collection for Public Reporting Handbook. This handbook is intended to assist LEAs in completing the Title IV Part A LEA Special Data Collection process as part of TEA's federal requirement to collect and publicly report data. All data submitted will be publicly reported. Therefore, the LEA should not include any confidential or Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act or FERPA protected information. This handbook is available on the Federal Program Compliance Division's webpage under Title IV Part A Resources. Documenting overall compliance for the Title IV Part A Special Data Collection Federal Program requirement may require several forms of documentation to be maintained locally and available upon request by TEA and/or an auditor. To ensure overall compliance with Title IV Part A program requirements, LEAs should refer to the program guide and/or other program-related resources that reference the multiple forms of documentation that are required to be maintained locally. This training will only address the following requirements related to the Title IV Part A program objectives and intended outcomes. The Title IV Part A Special Collection requirements, instructions for submitting the special data collection, and the timeline related to objectives and outcomes. Federal statute in the ESA requires states to publicly report how LEA funds are being used. The handbook is intended to assist the LEAs in completing the data collection process as part of TEA's federal requirement to collect and publicly report data. This requirement is listed in the federal statute under Title IV Part A's Section 4106. An LEA must include a description of the activities and programming that it or the consortium of such agencies will carry out under Title IV Part A. This requirement is listed in the ESA program-specific provisions and assurances that LEAs receiving a Title IV Part A subgrant agreed to prior to submission of their ESA Consolidated Federal Grant application. The LEA will maintain a description of the activities and programming that it will carry out, including a description of the program objectives and intended outcomes for activities and how the LEA will periodically evaluate the effectiveness of those activities based on objectives and outcomes, which is the focus of our training today. One of the items on the compliance report in the Program Compliance Report PR 3107, the LEA periodically evaluated the effectiveness of the programs and/or activities based on the program objectives and intended outcomes. TEA will take a phased-in approach to launch the Title IV Part A LEA Special Data Collection for public reporting. During the first phase of the collection, LEAs will only provide Title IV Part A program objectives and measurable outcomes for the 2022 through 2023 school year. The TEA Federal Program Compliance Smart Sheet WorkApp for the special data collection will open January 17th through March 17th, 2023. Please include the information referenced in the table to demonstrate compliance with the Title IV Part A program requirements. LEAs will be required to tie each Title IV Part A program objective to at least one of the 3 Title IV content areas: well-rounded education, safe and healthy students, and the effective use of technology. For LEAs that receive an allocation of at least $30,000, it must have funding to support all 3 content areas. However, only 2 program objectives and measurable outcomes will be reported within the WorkApp. It is the LEA's decision on which program objectives and intended outcomes it would like to include in the WorkApp. Every LEA must submit 2. Here are a sample of program objectives and outcomes for each content area. As you can see, for well-rounded education, one of the samples states, Example ISD will provide well-rounded education opportunities for students as a supplemental enrichment music course during an after-school program by January 2023. The outcome is Example ISD. There would be at least 85% of the students in the supplemental music course who would show mastery in after-school music skills and concepts by week 10 of the enrichment program. There's also a sample under the content area of safe and healthy students. By May 2023, using discipline referral data, Example High School will reduce student vaping infractions 25% through the installation of vaping detectors in all student bathrooms. The planned outcome is that the high school student vaping infractions will decrease 25% as reported by the discipline referrals by May 2023. And then one more example you can see in the content area of effective use of technology. These are just a few examples that we are sharing to give the district an idea of how the program measurable objectives and intended measurable outcomes should be created and input in the WorkApp. Smartsheet WorkApp instructions. Please note the LEA staff submitting the information will need access to the Department of Grant Compliance and Administration WorkApp system. Currently, the Superintendent, Chief Financial Officer, and Federal Program Director listed in Ask TED have been given access to the system. To add or change the individuals with access to the systems, someone with the existing access must request access for the new individual by the help form in the Edgar Smartsheet WorkApp. The additional staff to be added to the system must agree to certain security requirements. I have also included video instructions for requesting the additional LEA staff that you may view. I will share that currently there are very few LEAs staff in each area that has access to the system. LEAs that received a Title IV Part A allocation for 22-23 again are required to report in the Smart app January 17th through March 17th. The information requested for submission during the special data collection process may not include all forms of documentation that are required to be maintained locally. If eligible LEAs do not submit the required information by the deadline, LEAs will be non-compliant and may be referred to the TEA Compliance Officer and/or the Federal Fiscal Monitoring Division for further review. The login to the WorkApp system. This will be the first page that the staff that have been granted access will see to log into the WorkApp to collect the data as needed. The staff will click on the Federal Program Compliance Division WorkApp tile. Then click on the Title IV Part A Objectives and Outcomes link, as you see here. Click on the Federal Fiscal Year 2022 line to access the Details Form Data tab. That is where the LEAs will begin to enter data. Complete the Details Form Data tab. The LEA program contact information. Complete the fields with the information for the LEA program contact. The LEA program contact should be the person that is most familiar with the information being submitted. This is the person that TEA will contact if additional information is needed or if clarification is needed on what was submitted. The following fields are required. The LEA will type the name of the contact, the email address, and the phone number of the person who could be contacted. An LEA may use the funding transferability and/or REAP options anytime during the grant period. Therefore, an LEA redirecting 100% of Title IV Part A funding utilizing transferability and/or the REAP option will be required to also submit data, although it would be limited data. All LEAs receiving the Title IV Part A subgrant must submit some data, certify, and submit the WorkApp for public reporting. LEAs that redirect 100% of their Title IV Part A funding through transferability or REAP will certify that they actually redirected 100% of those funds to implement other programs and will not be required to complete all pages. Continue listening to hear what specific data an LEA must submit that has redirected 100% of its Title IV Part A program. On the REAP Funding Transferability Options page, the LEA will select the appropriate response from the drop-down list for the following question. Did the LEA redirect 100% of its Title IV Part A funds under Funding Transferability and/or the Rural Education Achievement Program, REAP? A response from the drop-down menu is required. If yes is selected, skip to step 5, which is the certification statement, and save your data. If the response is no, the LEA must complete the remaining data fields. LEAs may review and update, if applicable, the pre-populated response that was reported previously from the drop-down list for the following question. Did the LEA redirect 100% of its Title IV-A funds under Funding Transferability and/or the REAP program? A response would be required. So if there are any changes throughout the school year to REAP and/or funding transferability that would include 100% of the funds, or the district decided to keep the funds, they would be able to go in and revise this particular item in the WorkApp. LEAs must complete the objective and measurable outcome 1. Once submitted, the LEA will not be able to revise program objective and measurable outcome within the WorkApp box. The goal is for an LEA to keep the same objective and measurable outcomes throughout the year, unless there are extenuating circumstances supported with data and/or immediate changes to what was previously submitted. If that is the case, the LEA may submit comments that could include any revised program objectives and measurable outcomes. LEAs must also complete the objective and measurable outcome 2. Once submitted, the LEA will not be able to revise the program objective and measurable outcome within the WorkApp box. Again, if there are any changes or any needed change to the objective or measurable outcome or other comments, the LEA may put that information in the LEA comment box. All Title IV Part A subgrantees are required to check this certification statement. I hereby certify that the information contained in this report is, to the best of my knowledge, correct, and that the LEA named above has authorized me as its representative to submit this data. I further certify that reported program activities were conducted in accordance with all applicable federal and state laws and regulations, application guidelines and instructions, the provisions and assurances, debarment and suspension, lobbying requirements, special provisions and assurances, and the schedules of the approved application for funding. The question is the LEA staff submitting this report in agreement with the certification statement above? The LEA must certify yes. After the data has been input into the system, the LEA must save the message, must click on Save. If the Save button is grayed out and inaccessible, a required field is missing information. A blue Save button indicates that all required fields have information. Then the LEA will click on the blue Save button to keep the information. This step is required for all LEAs including those that have transferred or reaped 100% of their Title IV Part A funds. And lastly, the LEA should sign out of the Department of Grant Compliance and Administration WorkApp system by clicking on the icon located at the bottom left-hand corner of the window and selecting Sign Out. An LEA at any point in the year can reap or transfer throughout. The LEA may increase percentages but not decrease percentages throughout the school year. So there is no way for the federal program compliance staff to know if 100% of the Title IV Part A funds have been transferred to another fund. For that reason, we're asking that question. Another important reminder is LEAs must not include confidential or FERPA protected information. All LEA submitted data will be reported publicly. And all LEAs that receive the Title IV Part A funds, regardless of the amount, must submit WorkApp data. LEA Reporting Worksheet. The LEA Reporting Worksheet is an optional planning document or template that LEAs may use. LEAs will not submit this document to TEA. Data shown in this resource will be requested in the Federal Program Compliance Smartsheet WorkApp. The LEA Reporting Worksheet provides information on required data and its reporting dates for Title IV Part A funds during the complete federal fiscal year, 27 months. LEAs may utilize this document to see upcoming due dates, requirements, and reporting cycles that are needed for TEA submission. This presentation, however, only focuses on Activity 1. The LEA must report 2 Title IV Part A objectives and measurable outcomes for the current school year during the reporting cycle, January 17th through March 17th, 2023. This document is located on the Title IV Part A webpage under the LEA Special Data Collection for Public Reporting section. This portion of the LEA reporting worksheet, you can see a Step 1, Step 2, and Step 3. We will not be focusing on Step 2 or Step 3 during this presentation. We're only going to be focused on the Step Activity 1, which is reporting the Title IV Part A objectives and measurable outcomes 1 and 2, and entering what the multiple selection items are under the content areas. When the app opens January 17th through March 17th, that is when the LEA will complete Step 1. If there are any LEA comments regarding the objectives or measurable outcomes, then the LEA would put that information in the LEA text box. This is an optional tool in which an LEA that may be working with Title IV program may not have access to the WorkApp. They can use this reporting worksheet to record what they would like the submitter to enter into the WorkApp system so that they would be able to, another person would be able to submit that data. Future data submissions for 2023 through 2024. The Title IV Part A Special Data Collection Timeline shows the program objectives and intended outcomes dates only for that particular data entry. As you can see, once the LEA submits the WorkApp, they will receive notification that data has been submitted, actually on March 17th, 2023. The ESCs will also be copied on the emails to notify them that their LEA has submitted the data. This is for the future progress reporting, which will not be included during this first phase in the spring. Here you can see the reporting periods, which start July 22 through September 23rd is the initial phase reporting. That will open October 1 of this year and close December 1 of 2023. The carryover period would be from October 1, 2023 through September 30th, 2024. That will be the final phase reporting, and that will be open October 1 through December 1, 2024. Again, this is future progress reporting. It will be very simple for districts to enter this data. In the progress reporting options, the LEA will enter minimal measurable progress was made, some measurable progress was made, substantial progress was made, or the outcomes were met, 100% progress. If 100% of the funds were expended for the current year, 22 through 23, the initial report will be considered the final report for the LEA. If Title IV Part A funds are carried over into the next year, which is the 23 through 24, the LEA will need to report the final progress. The final phase of progress reporting for LEAs that carried over Title IV Part A funds into the 23-24 school year opens on October 1, 2024. And the due date for submitting the final progress report will be December 1st, 2024. As a reminder, the districts will not be reporting carryover data or carryover expenses for the 22-23 school year. During the first phase of the collection regarding the current and carryover expenditures, the LEAs will only provide Title IV Part A program objectives and measurable outcomes. The first phase of Title IV Part A expenditures data collection will take place in October of 2023. The FPC Smartsheet WorkApp for the special data collection will open October 1 through December 1, 2023 for expenditures. Please note that this data collection does not replace the expenditure reporting process required for drawdown purposes. LEAs will continue to report expenditures as per the existing expenditure reporting process. LEAs must track Title IV Part A current year expenditures separately from expenditures made with funds carried over from the prior year. The LEA will report federal fiscal year 2022 expenditures from July 1, 2022 through September 30th, 2023 by service or content areas. The amounts reported should not include the funds carried over from 21 through 22 school year. In October 2023, LEAs will include information referenced in the table below to demonstrate compliance with the Title IV Part A program expenditure requirements. Direct administration costs, activities to support well-rounded education opportunities, activities to support safe and healthy students, activities to support effective use of technology, and technology infrastructure, which is limited to 15% of the funds set aside in the activities to support effective use of technology. Frequently asked questions. Are there TEA instructions or other tools available to assist LEAs submitting data? Yes. LEAs may use the Special Data Collection for Public Reporting Handbook for specific federal requirements and TEA's Smartsheet WorkApp submission instructions. Districts may also use the LEA reporting worksheet as a planning document to prepare data for submission. The LEA reporting worksheet, again, is an optional tool, and it is kept within the district. It should not be submitted to TEA. Where are the statewide training session materials located? All training slides and voiced-over presentations are located on the Federal Program Compliance Statewide Training Series webpage. Is there a TEA webpage that provides information on the LEA Special Data Collection for Public Reporting and its requirements? Yes, LEAs may find information and requirements in the LEA Special Data Collection for Public Reporting section of TEA's Title IV Part A webpage. If an LEA redirects 100% of its Title IV Part A funds by REAP and/or the funding transferability option, is it required to complete the WorkApp for public reporting? Yes. Per federal guidance, TEA must collect data on all LEAs receiving a Title IV Part A subgrant. LEAs that redirect 100% of its Title IV Part A funding by funding transferability and/or the Rural Education Achievement Program will certify that it redirected 100% of those funds to implement other programs and will not be required to provide all the additional data. It will need to save the page that will report to TEA 100% has been used for other programs. Support for assistance and resources. The Title IV Part A resources are located on the Title IV Part A webpage under the Federal Program Compliance Division. The LEA Special Data Collection for Public Reporting section of the Title IV Part A webpages includes the Instructional Handbook of Requirements and Submission Details, as well as an LEA reporting worksheet that districts may use while preparing data for the Smartsheet WorkApp. All LEAs that applied for Title IV Part A Subpart 1 program funds are required to report information requested. LEAs can access the following resources related to the LEA Special Data Collection. Title IV Part A resources are located on the TEA webpage under Federal Program Compliance, and some of those resource documents include the January 2023 presentation, Title IV Part A Program Objectives and Measurable Outcomes, the December 2022 training slides from the Title IV Part A LEA Special Data Collection for Public Reporting. That is a more detailed report of the entire process for Title IV Part A Special Data Collection. So if you have not attended that training live or have not reviewed the training slides, I urge you to review that presentation prior to completing the information in January through March in the WorkApp. You may also find the ESA Title IV Part A LEA Special Data Collection for Public Reporting Handbook and the LEA Reporting Worksheet. All of these documents are linked on this slide so that you may get to them easily. LEAs may use the Title IV Part A program guide for specifics on the program's intent and purposes, allowable use of funds, program objectives, and measurable outcomes. LEAs may reach out to regional ESC staff who are available to provide technical assistance and support. On this screen, you can see all of the different areas in which your ESC staff are readily available to assist you as an LEA. TEA contact information. You may contact myself, Lenitra Guess. I am the Title IV Part A Program Director, through email or through phone. You may send an email to the division email address and address it Title IV questions. In the event that I am out of the office, someone else would be able to respond to your questions. Thank you and have a wonderful day.